Perhaps one of the most popular monarchs in history, Queen Cleopatra's life has been the subject of many literary adaptations from movies to books, and most recently in the Netflix docu-series Queen Cleopatra. This recent depiction has been met with mixed reactions from audiences, and has even sparked a reaction from the Egyptian government. In this video, we will review Netflix's depiction of Cleopatra in the docu-series and analyze what the anthology got right, wrong, and what they misconstrued about the last pharaoh of Egypt. Stick around to find out if Netflix's Cleopatra is an accurate historical portrayal, or just another shoddy Hollywood project. With this video, it will be easier for you to give a brilliant critique of Netflix's Cleopatra and an honest star rating. Even though she had lived thousands of years ago, Cleopatra's life may as well have been a current reality show, with how much of her life was documented. But perhaps one very important detail which has caused dispute within scholars over the decades has been one very puzzle. What was her skin color like? Now, back in Cleopatra's time, skin color may not have been the issue it is now, especially compared to the current phenomena of cultural appropriation. If you did not already know, even Netflix was caught in the crossfire of Cleopatra's skin color. This was after Netflix's portrayal of the Queen as a woman of color, a decision that sparked a rebuttal from the Egyptian Ministry of Culture. That's right, the debut of Netflix's Cleopatra brings, in its wake, the biggest, most recent controversy about Cleopatra in the history of Hollywood. Not even Elizabeth Taylor's infamous femme fatale portrayal of the Queen in 1963 sparked this level of reaction. Cleopatra has always been portrayed by the media as a seductive and overtly feminine woman who had a way of making men sway or convincing them to do her bidding. But this Netflix documentary takes a different turn in recreating Cleopatra's life by making the heroine not a sexist figure as portrayed many times over, but a black woman with African roots. The executive producer of the docu-series, Jada Pinkett Smith, said in a press release, "We don't often get to see or hear stories about black queens, and that was important to me, as well as for my daughter, and just for my community to be able to know those stories, because there are tons of them." This belief goes in line with the main theme of the documentary, which basically is to bring the four notable black queens from the depths of history in order to empower and inspire black women of today. Critics' displeasure over Netflix's Cleopatra, played by black British actress Adele James, stems from the argument that Cleopatra was of Greek descent and would have most likely been white. However, there is no real evidence of this. Basically, much of the discontent hinges on the claim that the Netflix documentary, like other recent films in the industry, has been blackwashing historical records. But aside from the problem of skin color in the 4-episode docu-series, Netflix's Cleopatra did relatively well in other aspects. For one, the series followed the recorded account of Cleopatra's life with references from true scholars and historians. It starts by introducing Cleopatra, about 17 years of age, as the next successor to the throne after her father's, Ptolemy XII's, death. The Ptolemies, a family from Macedonia which formed the dynasty from which Cleopatra reigned, were described as ruthless and unforgiving. Sibling feuds, usurpations, and ruthless executions were the primary characteristics of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and Netflix's Cleopatra places undue emphasis on this fact. Cleopatra, who was next in line to rule Egypt, was not in fact the eldest daughter. Her father had executed her elder sister for attempting to usurp the throne. With the eldest gone, he wanted her to rule alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. This is another area that the makers of the docu-series get right. Incest was a common practice in the Ptolemies. The bloodline had to remain pure, and because of this, the rulers married within the family. In addition, Cleopatra married her younger brother in accordance with the Egyptian tradition, which began with the Egyptian gods Osiris and Isis. Based on this belief, there had to be 2 pharaohs in Egypt, and Netflix's Cleopatra does excellently well in touching the helms of history in this regard. Most of the events that surrounded Cleopatra's life from historical records were documented brilliantly in Netflix's Cleopatra. Her exile from Egypt around 48 BC by her brother/husband Ptolemy XIII, her settlement in Syria alongside her only sister Arvinso, the defeat of Pompey at Julius Caesar's hands, and the the decapitation of Pompey on her husband's orders all play well along the lines of history. However, there is one contentious aspect of Queen Cleopatra's life that Netflix's Cleopatra tried to resolve reasonably. This is the question of Cleopatra's first meeting with Julius Caesar. The Netflix documentary goes against the popular version, which suggests that Cleopatra snuck into Caesar's palace before she was eventually presented from a rolled-up carpet, to portray a scene where she was smuggled into the palace in an accessory that looks like a bag. The popular version pegs Cleopatra to be a beautiful and seductive woman who mesmerizes the Roman emperor. But the docuseries chooses a different path, which does not sexualize the Egyptian pharaoh, and this can arguably be regarded as a big up for Netflix's Cleopatra. However, it doesn't totally discredit the fact that Cleopatra's personality and beauty assisted her in political ambitions. Historians in the docuseries agree with the fact, but they are not of the fact that Cleopatra only made considerable progress through illicit means. Moving forward, a lot of details concerning Cleopatra's and Caesar's relationship were accurately reenacted in Netflix's Cleopatra, including the fact that Caesar never publicly stated that Caesarion, his son with Cleopatra, was his own. Nothing elaborate is said regarding Caesar's death in the docuseries, but points made by historians indicate that Cleopatra was put in a difficult situation following his assassination. So far, Netflix's Cleopatra has done a great job in addressing the background and life of Queen Cleopatra, but it goes a little downhill from the portrayal of the events following Caesar's death. Rome was dystopian after the death of its most powerful emperor, and Cleopatra was caught in this tough situation. That was until she met and got into a relationship with Mark Antony. The docuseries dives into this relationship and does the unthinkable by romanticizing the Egyptian queen, perhaps even whitewashing her legacy, no pun intended. Taking a different route from the Egyptian Aphrodite who succeeded in attracting Julius Caesar as other media portray her to be, she is romanticized as a protagonist with a hero complex, whose every opposition is painted in a villainous light. This way, the makers go out of their way to make the Black Queen the heroic figure that would match the theme of the series, even if it distorts history. Through her relationship with Mark Antony, she gets rid of her political rivals, including her own sister, Arsinoe. Even at that, all her actions are still justified to further perpetuate the image as an unsullied hero. Her motives are then masked as one striving for her survival, in place of the rabid political ambition Cleopatra possessed. Besides this discrepancy and the question of her true character in tumultuous Rome, Cleopatra is still a very iconic historical figure. Also, irrespective of the hue of Cleopatra's skin color and her Greek roots, the true Cleopatra was indeed an African queen, and Netflix's Cleopatra sent that message all too clearly. The Ptolemies were just as part of the African heritage as other African dynasties, so whether or not she was truly black or white, she was still African. One other good thing worthy of note is how the Netflix docuseries rightly acknowledges that much of Cleopatra's success as a ruler was due in part to her ability to inspire her subjects in ways that no other Ptolemaian ruler before her ever could. Being a versatile and knowledgeable woman, she was versed in multiple languages. At the time, Greek was the royal language used by the Ptolemaic rulers in their official businesses, so the only way they could communicate with their Egyptian subjects was through a translator. This, however, did not apply to Cleopatra, as she learned and spoke the local Egyptian languages, unlike her predecessors, who never saw the value of learning other languages. Her respect for the Egyptians and their culture made her an exceptional icon, and Netflix's Cleopatra did an excellent job of passing this message across directly and suggestively. Sadly, all of these does not absolve Netflix's Cleopatra from being the subject of criticism for its portrayal of the Egyptian queen as a black woman. Most critics obsess more over Netflix's Cleopatra's complexion than the actual life of the queen. This is telling of the kind of world we live in today, where there is racial competition and reservations for black feminism in the movie industry. Regardless of what is true or not about Cleopatra's skin color, Netflix's depiction of her is still partly credible. She was a scholar, a wise ruler, and a linguist. So, without viewing the film through racial lenses, what rating can you actually give it? A 7 wouldn't be bad, no?